Squeaks and rattles can be really annoying on any car, and today I'm going to be resolving a squeak from the interior of my Jeep Grand Cherokee. The interior of this car is generally quite well soundproofed. Being a 4x4, you do get a bit of road noise, a bit of driveline noise. You can hear the transfer case a bit and the various differentials doing their thing, but overall it's a fairly quiet driving experience. And for that reason, it is particularly annoying when you get a creak like this. As you can hear, that could drive you mad over a period of time. Now, when I first heard this noise, I thought it was coming from the brake pedal because it seemed to happen sometimes when I moved my leg and pressed the brake pedal. So I lubricated the brake pedal linkages, which I will go on to demonstrate now. On the WK Grand Cherokee, there is this panel here that can be released really easily. It's just held in by some clips, so all you do is you pull it down. And then, if you look in here, you can see the steering column and you can see the pedal, including the fulcrum pivot points. So I lubricated all of this with some WD-40. I know it's not the best, and I would follow that up with something like white grease had it cured the problem, but it didn't. Actually made no difference at all. So I realised quite quickly that it actually wasn't the brake pedal that was at fault. Incidentally, this, you can see here, it's held in with these clips. 1, 2, 3 and 4. And this panel just snaps back into position like that, and then this piece here, this surround, just pushes back in, and then it's all reinstated. I then turned my attention to the steering wheel, as I felt maybe it's coming from either the column or the airbag squib, which is the clock spring type device that lives behind the steering wheel that maintains the connection between the airbag, the horn buttons, all the steering wheel controls, maintains that connection between the steering wheel, which obviously is a rotating component, and the rest of the vehicle. So it's like a clock spring, a bit like the flexible section that you get on a laptop between the screen and the actual base. But it's in a coil, and these things can make some noise too. And I figured it may be that. So I'll just demonstrate, because there is some noise coming from that, but it isn't the noise. I have to start it so I can turn the steering wheel. Let's see if you can hear this. I'll just turn the heater off. I'm not sure if you can hear that, but there's just a very, very light scraping noise, which is perfectly okay. It's not a problem. When these squibs fail behind here, generally speaking, you lose functionality of something, be it the cruise control on this side or this side, maybe even the radio controls that live behind, maybe the horn, maybe the airbag light could come on. They don't last forever. The damn thing leads a very hard life. But the noise isn't coming from that. So after a lot of shifting around in this seat to try and replicate the noise, I worked out that it's actually coming from the seat base, or maybe even part of the frame. Now, over the years, I've done a lot of seat and upholstery work on vehicles. When I worked as a technician for a Volkswagen Audi dealer in the late 90s, I did a lot of warranty repairs on the seats on the Audi A4s. It's the B5, and also the equivalent Passat, which was essentially the same car under the skin. They had quite a few problems back then with seats coming unstitched, and I did quite a lot of them. and the workshop controller used to give a lot of them to me. I was generally a clean worker. I work with vehicles. Not everyone works like that. Some people work in a pit of oil and antifreeze. I always kept my bay clean, so I used to get such jobs. And I would take the seat out of the car, take the necessary airbag precautions, really important that, and then I would take the seat into a clean room, strip it down, replace the covering, the leather or the fabric covering, and reinstate it. And it's really important that you do that thoroughly, carefully, so that the new seat fabric, it fits neatly and it's taut, and that the customer wouldn't know afterwards that you've replaced it. It should look as good as it did before, obviously without the split. So I used to do a lot of these, and I used to really enjoy doing them. They're quite satisfying. And you replace the little hog rings, because the fabric or the leather is held to the foam with these little metal clips called hog rings, and you use special hog ring pliers which you crimp. I'll just take a moment to explain how seats on European cars are generally constructed. As I say, most of my experience comes from Volkswagen, Audi, and BMW. I've done a couple of seats on those, stripped them down. Interestingly enough, I worked with Vauxhall for 6 years. Don't think I did a single seat. It's amazing how different manufacturers have different sort of issues with their cars, different Achilles heels. But then all the time I worked with Volkswagen, I don't think I ever replaced a steering rack. And with Vauxhall, I was doing those every day, especially on Corsa Cs and Vectra Bs and Vectra Cs. They were always failing, so they just have their different areas. But I'll just take a minute to explain how many seats are constructed. So this is the driver's seat of my Jeep. Got two essential elements, which is the base and the backrest. And for the base and the backrest, there are then three components. There's the frame. You then have the foam, which sits into the frame, and then you have the covering. And the covering is what fits with the hog rings that I've just explained. And if you were to remove this covering, you would find that there would be hog rings at intervals that actually fix this covering down onto the foam. There'd be a metal bar built into the foam. The hog rings pull this taut, keeps everything in place. And they'll also be down here, maybe intervals throughout the seat. And similar for the backrest, you'll have hog rings across here, and these seats are held together. They're really interesting to take apart. You do have to be careful with the airbag if it's in the seat on certain cars. There are precautions. I won't go into that. You'd have to do your own research there. I'm not, but whatever you do, just make sure you know what you're doing. If you're trying this kind of thing yourself, you don't want to be setting off your airbags. Or there's always a risk as well, if you're disconnecting airbags, that you can end up with warning lights that need resetting, especially if you've taken the seat out and disconnected it with the ignition on. Okay? Really satisfying work, stripping down seats, and it's best to take the seat out of the car first so you can do everything. Now these Jeeps, however, have a slightly unusual arrangement in the sense that you can actually remove the whole base, separately. Now that might not be that unusual for American cars. Maybe lots of trucks are like that, I don't know. This is the first American car I've owned, and all my experience has been generally with European cars. But this has its advantages, because to try and solve this squeak today, I can simply remove the seat base, which I'll go on to explain. Now, on this generation of Jeep Grand Cherokee, you'll see that under the seat base, there are two bolts, one here and one here. So first of all, it's a good idea just to release this cable tie here, and then this clip just pulls out here. This just secures the loom, or allows the loom to be removed from the seat. Once you've removed the cable ties, you can move this loom out the way, and then you just need to undo this and this. Now once you've undone these bolts, these U-clamps simply come out. So you'll be left with two U-clamps, two bolts, and the two cable ties that you've cut to remove this loom. And now this seat just lifts out. There are some little wiring harnesses here that need to be removed from the seat to enable you to lift the whole thing out, yellow and green. To unclip, you simply pull this little red tab back, and then you press the connector in behind it, and then this just literally unplugs from here, which is very straightforward. Hard to do with one hand and holding a camera. This one doesn't have the tab, but you just push and release. You just need to remove those clips there from the actual seat base, and then this unclips as well from the seat base, and then there's nothing connecting it, and it's free. So this now gives us access to the frame, and there are a number of pivot points that will need to be greased once we've checked that there aren't any cracks. Now, I have had a good look at this, and there are no cracks anywhere. I know that there is a problem with this particular system that lifts the front part of this seat, part of the height adjustment system. There's a little plastic cam arrangement that would have been in there that unfortunately has broken, and I can't find it anywhere as a standalone item. I think it would have to be a whole seat base. It's not a massive problem, because all that means is that this front part of the seat always remains at the highest level, which is probably where I'd want it anyway, and it's sprung loaded, so when you sit inside it just gives slightly with weight, but it always seems to stay at this top point, and it's got a really powerful spring here anyway that holds that, so I'm not concerned about that. I'm happy to leave it unless I can ever get the little plastic part that lives in there. But in terms of the seat, nothing's broken. I have had a good look at it. I am going to be lubricating and greasing all the pivot points in here, which will hopefully solve the creaking. Now, the actual seat base that we removed rests against this point here and this point here, and there's a plastic clip. There are two plastic clips on the base that rest against there and there. That could be a point where there could be some squeaking. So I'll lubricate here and here, and also on the plastic part on the base. These also, I'm going to use white grease, which is excellent for this sort of thing. Things like WD-40 tend to disappear. They just evaporate over time, whereas something like white grease actually stays put. Refitting is the reversal of the removal, so we refit all the clips that hold these sections of wiring to the seat base, and we also refit the connectors to the seat base and reconnect the parts that are part of the car to those connectors. Plastic clips at the back locate on the bar, and they will do once I lower this down, and then we'll be looking at re-securing the front with these U-clamps. These clips have a little locating peg that needs to be vertical, which locates into a hole on here. And then the clamps relocate and they're bolted back in with the 8mm bolt. And we retighten the 8mm bolts. It's now just a case of refitting this wiring harness with the clips and fitting a couple of cable ties. Reinstate a cable tie here and just under here. Job done. All that we need to do now is to clean up any surplus grease and then test the seat for any more squeaks. Okay, so the seat's back together. I've had a good bounce around on the seat base and I can't seem to hear any sound, so that's really good news. It looks as though it solved the problem and got rid of that squeak, which was really annoying. I have to say that it's really handy that the seat base could be removed the way it could be on this Jeep. If this had been a seat on, say, a Golf or the BMW, my E92, I'd have had to have taken the whole seat out and stripped down the seat base, and it would have been a lot more involved than just undoing those bolts and lifting out the whole unit. So in this instance, this design is quite advantageous, even if it does seem a bit strange. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the video. I'd just like to say a big thank you to those of you who've recently subscribed. I have noticed a sudden increase in my number of subscribers, which is really great. But I would like to just ask that if you are watching my videos and you haven't yet subscribed, it would really help me if you could. And likewise, if you want to like or comment on any of my videos, then do feel free. If you have any ideas for any content you'd like to see, again, I'd be very interested to know. I'll be making as many repair videos as I can on my cars and friends' cars and other cars I get involved with. And I look forward to seeing you on another video soon. Thank you and goodbye.